Good morning, members of the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. So we're back to the story of Rebbe Nachman's story number 2, the Ma'aseh Beis, the Melech Abba-Keser. Let's go right to it now. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this story for several different reasons. One, it seems to be taking on a really big topic. Secondly, the Kabbalah that Rav Schick is using in here, I'm not sure that it linked with my understanding of Kabbalah 100%. So I'm trying to analyze it and try to see it. Now, what he's doing is he's speaking in a short form. So he wants to give us an idea of the importance of what he says. So let's see how he understands the story. This is a story that's called about, there was once a story about a Caesar, a Kesar, he says, which is a Hebrew word for that, and a king, a melech. So it starts like this. He says, his pirush goes like the Ma'aseh Bekeser Echad. There was once a Caesar, an emperor. Now he says that if you want to know what the symbol of this word Kesar means, is a Kesar Olok Mispar Shin Ayin. It comes to the number, if you take the gematria of it, there's a reference that you can understand the real meaning of this word from the number 370. This refers to the Shin Ayin, the Horem Shal Arich Anben. Now if you have this book, which is called the Pirush of Nari Parsimon, the rivers of Parsimon, so kind of a perfume, some kind of an idea like that. It's on page Mem. So he says that the Kesar represents not something physical, like a physical person, but it actually represents a very deep internal light of creation. Those lights are called the 370 lights, and they come from the face of Eric Anpen. Now, we're not going to go into too much of the detail on it, but in the two sides of the face, as if it was possible to say that there was such a thing as a face, which is all lights of unknowable dimension. On each side of the face is the name Kale, spelled out Aleph Lamed Fe, Lamed Mem Daled, Kale. Each side, that the gematria is 185. So it's on each side of his face, there's two Kales. Each one 185, and they make up the number 370, and they're all light. This is the light of the universe, the light that actually, empowering light that we can begin to have some understanding. So this is a little bit tricky in the sense that the way that Rav Schick wants to explain the origins of the universe. So these refer to those 370 lights, Shelo Hoyu Lobonim. But they had no children. In other words, it was just light. But the object of the light is creation, is to make another generation, something that you give the light to, so to speak. We've had this concept before, male and female. Because he says that the 370 lights had not developed. Yishtalshlu means it's like the Lashon Shalish, which means to make like a chain. They hadn't developed downwards into something more tangible. Gam melech echad, there was also a king. Now he changes the word melech. Zesod ha-malchus, it really refers to malchus, which is a receptacle. A receptacle was a female concept. Kodesh nispashto lamata, before it went down, and also because the female is the one that actually gives birth. Gam came lo choy lobonim, so this king, this malchus, wasn't able to reproduce it either, because if you don't put the two of them together, if you can't put the seed, so to speak, which could be represented by the 370, and put it together into the malchus in some way, and all the details of this are fantastic to see, but that's not for this story. It's because has not been any extension of these mochin. He uses the word mochin now because whatever comes from the higher places, going to the lower places, not whatever, but the main essence of it is called the moach, like a brain power, but some kind of, let's say, a white or gray matter that is the essence of the interior of the bone, so to speak. In other words, the essence of the panemius of everything that has been extended. So he says, Lo nipshko hamochin begilu ein sod baruch hu. The revelation of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which has to be made more physical. I'm talking about the revelation, not the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, but in other words, his radiance has to be made more physical for it to be able to be manifest in physical worlds. V'nasa HaKeser, so then the Keser started traveling. Who is Pashto the Shin Ayin Naharim, so the Shin Ayin Naharim, the 370 lights began to move. Ala Aretz Shote the Bakesh Ula Yimsa Eze Eitza Utrufa Laholid Banim. So he says, where did it travel? It traveled onto the earth. Now, the earth is another word for Malchus. So we see the word earth, it was sitting in Malchus, it was sitting on the earth. In order to be able to connect worlds. So really the way it's giving the idea that this incipient starts with Eric Anpin, as Eric Anpin is shining his light downwards and looking for a match on a female side to be able to receive it in order to be able to develop lower worlds and to bring light into lower worlds. Until he could, everything, the total creation can be developed down into 5 different partsufim. So also this Melech, again, Malchus. I think we have to understand about Malchus, and last, I thought really nice insight from the Matak B'Devash in regards to the Malchus of Hod, which was Friday night and Saturday, the Shabbos. The Malchus is always missing, always lacked. Our Malchus, that is, this world, is always missing. It's always lacking something. Every person, no matter how beautiful you are or how ugly you are, whatever you have or whatever your quality is, you may be ugly and strong. You may be beautiful and weak. Just different kinds of things, but there's always an aspect to a person that's always missing something, and that's Malchus. Malchus is always yearning. On the other hand, Eric Anpin, which is the way that he's describing Eric Anpin, wants to give. So you have something which is yearning and something which is giving, and that's a major koach, that is the major koach of the universe, which brings about all of creation. If you don't have these two things, now there's the words in Kabbalah for this are mad, maim duchrin, and man, maim nukvin. Maim duchrin is the desire to give, to put out there. This is we call this male. Male sometimes can be female, but switch around. But in terms of the basic idea of giving, it's masculine. And in terms of receiving, it's feminine. Because once things are set up so that there's a giver and there's a receiver, there's a possibility of reproduction and how that works. So this is really what the story is about, at least at this level. So this Malchus is also traveling. She is looking, let's see, it's a king, right? This Malchus, which is a she, which is a feminine quality. So you try to think like this, David HaMelech, right? He is Malchus, right? He is the rock on which we rest. He's below all of us, singing out and calling out and reaching out. This is what Malchus does. It doesn't have to be a male person. It's a female quality of wanting to receive. So the Nasakamo came, so this Melech was also moving. Because this is the fact of Malchus. Malchus is a universal recipient. And as a result of the fact that this is the lowest sphera in any system, in any dimension, Rabbi Memram was talking about this to me today, about the dimensions, because the physicists are realizing that, we can't understand what happens after you're dead, because the rules of the next dimension are not like the dimension we have now. Now, I'm going to say that's not what physicists are saying. But the physicists have realized that there are different dimensions, that the different dimensions have different rules. And so we live in a world which needs to manifest a higher dimension. But we're in a low dimension. We're in a very physical, dark dimension. Okay, anyway. So they were all together in one inn. Morid or Derekshin Ayin Olamos. So that is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Now he's using the word Kodesh Baruch Hu loosely. He's talking about the Ma'atzel, which we learned in our Sod Shir. We're talking about that Koach, which is causing things to move. He says, so he says, where he says, Kodesh Baruch Hu Bebrias Olamos, Morid or Derekshin Ayin Olamos. This is, he brought down light through these 370 lights, which are, as we said before, 185 on each side of the face. Kavayachal of Eric Anpin. Doesn't look like me. It's just that I'm just using my hands and like this to try to give us an idea what it's talking about. And she is going to be able to receive these lights. But they didn't recognize each other. They didn't know each other. So he's looking for her, she's looking for him, but they have to. Does this sound like a man looking for a woman, right? So he says, Rav Shach is going to talk about that because this, after all, after he gets through this really deep piece of Kabbalah, he's going to come over and he's going to talk about some practical things for our world. Because there's no togetherness. Shlemos means that there's no perfection, but it means that they're not together in any way. They're separate, seeking each other. So the Keser, that is, he said before that it refers to the 370 lights, looks at the king and he's thinking, the king, which is Malchus, that's the place I want to go. Sheyesh lo nimuz shal Malchus, because he could see the form of Malchus. Because the 370 lights, they're shining in a tremendously bright light, until at the end, they wind up coming down to the bottom, which is where Malchus is. So he asked this king, and he said, I am the king. I am Malchus. She uses her name. She says who I am. But then, this Malchus, this king, is able to look at this emperor, and he's able to see there's something there. And he also says, yes, I'm Kadosh too. We need each other. Because now the whole purpose, as Rabbi Memran said this today, is we have to understand the difference between yeshiva learning, which is learning of dinim, and the learning of sod. Because in dinim, what you're looking for is this one said this, that one said this one said this. Who do you hold by? So basically, we try to understand what are the big differences between them. We're always looking at differences and trying to find a kernel that we could use. In Yehudim, the idea is to bring